Hello, we're the anime reviewers. I'm Matthew, this is Zach. Today's episode, we're talking about Dr. Stone.
Dr. Stone is originally a manga series written by Richiro Inagaki, animated by TMS Entertainment, and directed by Shinya Ino.
We just finished the first episode of Dr. Stone. We think, it was good. I really enjoyed it.
Lots of fun.
Yeah, it's what I like in anime is that, and what you don't often see in a lot of animes where they don't, this episode could be its own thing. You could be a little short movie and that's all it is just this guy, having his this love interest that they do very well, I really enjoy how they, depict that, and how, he has this friend, and then he gets frozen into stone right before he's about to confess his feelings for her, and then immediately he gets turned into stone, and then someone just wakes up in a cave, and then finds his scientist friend, and they're gonna go try and save her, and then at the very end they save the bird, and that could be it. That could literally be it. So you just save the bird. That beautiful ending scene where the swallow flies up and flies away, and then you see how excited they are. That's all it needs to be.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. That is a, especially since in the first episode, there's this calamity event. It's very unclear what it is. All you ever see about it is this green light that floods the world.
Yeah.
But prior to the event happening itself, they show off. I want to say it's 6 minutes, 7 minutes, or something like that into the episode. There's
7 minutes.
7 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's about 7 minutes into the episode. They show off that there is a stone bird. So clearly something has already started.
Yeah. I didn't even think about it. I thought about that, but I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and that. But going back to what you were saying, where at the end that, I love the fact that that's one of the things that they did, was the fact that they made reference to the fact that something's happening, and it's unclear what. No one knows. It's just, and a lot. They even make mention in the series that there's these two high school girls that see it and they think it's a statue of some kind someone made and just left in a bush. They think it's an art installation piece type thing, and that's absolutely something that would happen in the real world. That happens in the real world. People make art installations, drop them in a place, and people make commentary about it.
I love the part where the main character, Senku, he says, that might be real. That could be a bird with a skin disease. He's the only one.
He's the only one that's
the only one who thinks of it. And makes that suggestion.
Oh, yeah.
That was really, I love that. The writing style was another thing I really complimented. And that's an excellent example of it, how just that little part right there, right in the beginning.
Oh yeah. I also love in the beginning, Taiju. It opens up with Taiju opening a classroom door, and telling his best friend Senku that he's gonna go confess his true feelings to this girl that they clearly they make it clear, especially by the end of the episode, that not even by 10 minutes in, that he is in love with this girl.
Without him saying.
Without him ever. Well,
he never says outright he loves her. He says he wants to confess his feelings
at the beginning, but when he actually makes the confession, he does say he loves her.
Really, I don't even remember him saying the confession.
Yeah, he says it when she's in stone form.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When she's still next to the camphor tree.
Yeah, right when after he finds her.
Right, right immediately. And then he immediately follows up with, "I will save you, no matter what."
I love the expressions he has throughout the whole. Oh, that's another thing I get.
I really enjoy the expressions. They're so fun, and they're very apt and very telling of what's going on in subtle ways.
Yeah.
When so what ends up happening is they find out that Senku and Taiju wake up in this cavern with this yellow liquid dripping on them. Senku informs Taiju that it is nitric acid. Nitric acid. From bat guano. So the episode goes on, and they're talking about the fact that Senku's been up for 6 months, or has been awake for 6 months. but he needed and all he's been able to do is barely keep himself alive and get the bare necessities for a single person. But in order to bring back humanity from this stone world, he needs muscle, he needs people, and he got really. As far as I can tell, it seems like he moved. It seems like Taiju at some point washed up near the cave, and Senku found a way to move him into the cave, because Taiju wakes up. Taiju wakes up on a bale of hay, or not like a bale, but like a hay bed thing.
Yeah.
So I think Senku moved him into the cave, and gave him something soft to lay on until he woke up. So at one point later in the series, Taiju goes to the cave to check on the nitric acid and sees this little container, like a large cup, that's filling with nitric acid, and freaks out that someone else is alive. And I love it because his face is like, oh my god, who else is alive? Did someone else survive? And then Senku's at the back like, I put that there. And then he's like just jaw drop, how did I not think of that?
And I just appreciate it's not that, because I'm not a fan of that cliched, the classic anime thing where they fall on their head and their feet go up in the air.
Yeah.
It's funny in certain things, but in, an anime like this, if they did something like that...
Oh, if they did
It would break the flow, in my opinion, but,
and not just the flow, but also the immersion.
Yeah.
This is definitely a series where, especially the first episode, definitely leans in the fact that, this is a world, this is happening, this is the reality of the situation. So things like, I'll call them pratfalls.
Pratfall is probably perfect.
I think that's a good word for it. That pratfall sort of imagery doesn't fit a very, yes, they're lighthearted, they have fun, but a pretty serious tone that the series seems to be trying to convey. For all intents and purposes, the world has ended.
Yeah, and these teenagers have to rebuild. It kind of reminds me of
16.
I think, and I like how it has that. That's something I really like. How how it's these teenagers have to kind of discover their own world, and you kind of get a sense of that. Those famous stories where kids go off and build their own world, like that movie, The Children of the Corn, or that book. Oh my God, where they're on the island and they have to, and there's Piggy, and they end up killing each other, and then they get rescued at the end. They end up killing a couple of the kids.
That's not familiar with me.
Oh my God, I'm so mad I'm blanking out on the name of that because it's a classic book, and but anyways, it's just a bunch of kids trapped in an island, and they basically build their own society, and the civilization slowly crumbles as the more brute force characters are the ones who are who overtake everything. That's totally how you get the sense of these, because you have these this really smart guy and then they emphasize this other character who's just stone. What's that guy's name?
Tsukasa. He's also known as the
Well, you don't want to get too into him with the first episode. He just mentions him as the primate.
The primate.
I forgot what he's called. The primate, because refers to him as a super primate thing or something like that, where he's super strong. But that's the only emphasis they have on him.
Yeah. They mention his name and then this moniker for him.
Yeah. He won some
the primitive high school or something like
that. The primitive high school.
The primate high school.
Primate high schooler. Yeah, he's just super stacked, and that's what I love is that scene where he's sitting there and he's perfectly.
He's sitting cross-legged like this.
He's accepting it, where everyone else is trapped under stuff and looking like they're horrified by it.
Or they're in a running motion
and it's doing such a good job of just setting up what this character's about and and you don't even know it's very well done.
It's great imagery because it obviously, because they mentioned him, he's at some point going to become important. They're going to revive him at some point soon. And he's got this very while there's chaos everywhere else, he has this very serene imagery about him.
Yeah.
He's sitting in a peaceful, a rather stoic or peaceful pose.
I thought he's sitting like a king on a throne. That's how I saw him. He's sitting like that classic Conan the Barbarian Conqueror look, where he's hunched over the throne and he's he's just kind of looking over everything, sitting on his high throne. That's how I saw his. I didn't see him sitting like where he's sitting like a thinker. He was sitting.
I didn't.
like a
No,
conqueror.
I'm sorry.
That's what
I didn't mean thinker. I didn't mean like the thinker pose.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I meant like.
Well, you said cross-legged. You didn't say that fist thing.
Yeah, I thought he was sitting.
I thought that's the thing. Like that. That's funny how we just watched the episode.
Yeah, we literally just watched the episode.
Yeah. But I remember him sitting kind of like this, where he's looking out like him, because it's like Conan the Barbarian is what I remember, because I'm a huge fan of that.
Yeah.
But that's a classic look of like kings and stuff.
Yeah, the ruler type character, or something, or conqueror type, or something like that. Yeah. And what else? So early on in the episode, like right at the very start of the event, when Taiju is just like Taiju meets up with what's her name? Yuzuriha.
Yeah.
That's the girl's name. Outside the school at this camphor tree, and he's like, he's literally just about to confess. Sees this event, sees this bright light off in the distance, and is like, tells her to like hold on to the camphor tree, and he runs out in front of her and like ends up putting his hands out, like, you know, trying to defend her or something, or that type of pose, or trying to hold off whatever's coming. And I really enjoy the fact that later on, after he wakes up and goes looking, his immediate hope and his immediate thinking is to go find that camphor tree, and she is still next to it. She's like, and it's great imagery, because like I love the fact that one of the things he does, which I find very interesting, is he like right after he wakes up, he sees someone that's like broken into pieces, and all he does is give like a small prayer and says, "This is all I can do for you now," and goes and finds this camphor tree, and then it thanks the camphor tree for protecting Yuzuriha, because she's still at it.
And he did tell her to go by the tree.
To go by like hold on to the camphor tree, I think.
Yeah.
And like as the camphor tree grew, like instead of
it grew around her.
It grew
through her.
Well, it didn't grow. What grew around her was like the moss and everything. Yeah. But like the camphor tree itself grew away from her, which I find really interesting.
Oh,
like,
wow! I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, because that camphor tree starts off like.
It was like a sapling.
Yeah, like a sapling, generic tree size.
Yeah.
But you go 3,700 years in the future, like this thing is, you know, redwood size. Like, you know, and all that's covering her, like some branches and like the moss is like holding her to the tree. And I really enjoyed that imagery.
Yeah, that was really good.
And then Senku, I love how Senku's thought when he woke up was to find that as well, and leave a note for him, telling him to follow the river, you big oaf. It's like, I mean, like Senku knows you're gonna wake up and go here. Once you wake up, I don't know what that's gonna be, but your first thing is gonna be to find this tree.
Well, that's what I really liked about his character. Senku's character is he seems like someone who's just so like a Vulcan or whatever, where he's super logical and has no emotion. But you see, like when they're in that scene.
Well, I wouldn't say he has no emotion. I'd say he has emotional responses, but has the ability to come up with a logical solution, not be driven by emotion.
He doesn't get like he gets slapped, he gets afraid, but he always is able to keep his cool and stuff. But he still is invested in his friend. And that's what I really like, is how like you think like initially, because they kind of depict him as like a evil character with the lighting and how.
Oh yeah, the lighting, and then like this ridiculously like.
But
how do you keep hair up that high? Like that's like 3 feet above his head. It's like. And like the hair, like the bangs that hang over his eyes, well, like. That's total evil imagery, like total bad guy imagery.
Well, and that's what I love, is that like it initially seems like, is he going to be some sort of villainous guy, and then it's like, no, he's mad scientist.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And there's not, and that's like, I love how that's like a really thin line of mad scientist, which I'll bring up when we talk about the second episode of how I think that's really cool dynamic.
Yeah.
And I really liked how he like when you see him when he encourages his friend tells him he's going to confess to his feelings to the girl, and then he encourages him to do it, And he's like, "Are you gonna?" But he does it by mocking him.
Encouragement. I love his form of encouragement.
It's like that backhanded mocking. Like, you're not gonna do it. You've tried, or so whatever. Or
no, it wasn't even that. It was Senku created what you find out like literally 30 seconds later is he created ethanol, and he had it in this beaker bottle, and he goes, "Oh, you want to do this? He's like, I support you like 1,000,000,000%, and I'm not rooting for you 1 millimeter. But if you really want to do this and really want to improve your chances, drink this." He says it'll improve your pheromones and
oh yeah, yeah, the potion, yeah,
yeah, the love potion.
Yeah, he promises him a love potion.
Yep.
Doesn't have it all. I didn't realize they did now establish what it was.
Yeah. So Taiju ends up taking it and immediately pours it out. And like
that's awesome.
Thanks him for like his clear it's Senku's way of like support. Wow. And Taiju recognizes that and thanks him for it, but also acknowledges that it's very clear that Taiju has gotten to the point where he acknowledges that if he were to take that, it admits that he's not at a point where he can actually do that. So he pours it out because he wants to do it himself.
Yeah.
He wants it to be his feelings.
Yeah.
He wants it to be his truth.
That's awesome.
Then he pours it out and leaves. And then there are other students who are like, Senku, you made a love potion? What? And Senku's like, nah, that's ethanol, guys. Like, that's gas. And everyone's like, if he drank that, wouldn't he die? And Senku's like, what's his phrase? Like 1,000,000,000% sure that he wouldn't?
Yeah. Yeah. And then it goes to, then it shows they go to where he's like confessing to her, and you see in the background him drinking. He's drinking a drink.
Juice.
Yeah, like juice or some orange can.
And it's also that scene as well.
And he chokes up when he's actually like going through it.
He's about when he's about to. But what I love just before that is there are these 3 other students that are taking side bets on whether he'll get rejected, and it's like
wow.
it's like I think it's like 100 yen he'll get rejected. It's 200 yen he'll get rejected, and 500 yen that he'll get I think it's like utterly rejected. And then Senku's like 10,000 yen on he doesn't, and they're like, what are you talking about? And then then that's when it cuts back to them like doing the confession thing, and that's when he spits out because he's like, oh geez, you're actually doing this. Like this wasn't a joke.
And I just love how right when he's about to do it, frozen.
Yeah.
The whole thing, and then it launches you all into the awesomeness of the story.
That is actually one thing I do enjoy. Like Senku's clearly the leader of their friendship in regard. Once you hit the stone world, but that intro scene, like once everyone turns to stone, the thought process you're following the whole time is Taiju's.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's because he's focused on he absolutely wants to confess. He wants to protect Yuzuriha. He wants to save her. And that's what you're following in I mean, it's a montage, but like, and it's not constant talking over, it's just periodically, and it's very clear he's trying to keep himself focused and survive on willpower. And I like the fact that, like, yes, the show is called Dr. Stone, which clearly is meant to be a representation of Senku and his thoughts and his creations and things like that, but it also acknowledges the fact that, like, he's not going to get anywhere without his friends.
Well, that's something I kind of like too. Is Dr. Stone, like the main character of the story is Taiju.
No,
but
Senku.
Well, no, but that's what I'm saying. Is like the perspective is Taiju. The perspective is Senku, and the main character of the story is Taiju, where you're seeing everything through Senku's eyes. You're seeing everything. That's why he's like. You're seeing. That's why, like, think about how like goofy his love is for the girl. How he is like. That's all his perception, because that guy is just pure science. Like, he's just pure science and logic, and the one thing, like, and how, like, even though he's like super dedicated, and like how dedicated he is to everything, and how like he wants to save everyone, and it doesn't seem like
Senku wants to save everything.
Or you Senku? That's what I was talking about. Senku's talking about.
Senku's the
and that's what I like. Why I feel like everything's from his perspective is because you think about it. When you see the villainous character, I'm not going to talk about that yet. When you see all the romance, and even when he's a big he always, like, how buffoon he, like, when he...
Oh, yeah, they mention each other's names, like, I think, like twice in the episode in total.
Yeah, and that's actually.
And then it's just them like it's referring to like Taiju always refers to Senku by name. That is one thing Taiju always does.
Yeah, like he's
Senku,
a very proper and polite person.
But Senku, on the other hand,
always calls
him Big O.
Yeah,
I think he mentions his name one time, like near the beginning of the episode.
Yeah, he's like, "Hey, Tai," like when he goes into to offer them the potion. And stuff.
Taiju take it. Yeah, and it's I think the only time he says Taiju's name in the whole episode.
I think you're right. I don't. Yeah.
Which I actually enjoy because it makes the characters feel real and that they have a relationship. But I will say it does make trying to remember who's who mildly difficult.
Yeah.
Like it is sometimes like really easy to forget certain characters' names because they're not referred to by name all that often.
Yeah.
And then but I also like it because it, like I said, it makes it a real friendship. It makes it feel like a real friendship.
And we've literally talked about like the first 10 minutes of the episode and a little bit of like I love how it jumps to like that. Eventually they like once they like establish how long it's been, which is like 3,700 years.
Yep.
And then
I think they mentioned the exact date. It's I have it here. So Taiju and Senku meet up on October 5th in the year 5,738. 3,700 years after the world turned to stone.
And I just like how like immediately Taiju is just like, all right, Senku, you're calling the shots. I'm gonna do what I need to do, and then they go right to that like little montage of them just like basically constantly experimenting, failing over the swallows, which really drives home the previous scene where Taiju and the girl run into each other because they both carried a stone bird and carried it to the vet, and Taiju's like nervous because she kind of makes fun of him, but then it reveals she did the exact same thing, and he laughs in the sense of like how she, or in the sense that like you get like she thinks he's laughing at her, but he's actually laughing at the fact that he thought she was like it just happened upon him, and he's all embarrassed for being like this carrier.
Yeah. He's clearly laughing at like his own because you get a brief like thought of like, oh, I'm such a doofus. Like, she caught me doing something doofus again.
And she does like what any real friend would do and give you crap about the exact same thing she did.
Oh, yeah.
And and then he laughs it off and she doesn't understand, just like he did.
It's clear at that moment she doesn't know that he, like... Yeah. Because he ends up laughing because she says, it looks like I did this. I did the same doofus thing.
Yeah.
And he laughs at it, and it's clear he's laughing at his own insecurities. But she's like, "Hey, don't laugh at me."
Oh yeah. Oh, and
or don't laugh at me for doing the same thing.
And
that's what it was.
Yeah. I was doing the same thing as you, and it's so charming. And then he has the same. Then he sees with his friend, like his friend is like he's trying to get all the birds together and. He's like experimenting on them, and he's figuring out exactly how to make the proper concoction to search for this cure. He's looking for
to revive everybody.
And he's starting with the birds, and it's so great that he like eventually figures it out, and you see all the birds, all that. And you'd mentioned
So like when they first meet up, and Senku brings Taiju back to his little like home camp thing. He set up like a place for him to sleep and have a couple things, and then what he calls a lab. And there's shelves with a bunch of stone.
He has a sign that says laboratory.
It's a sign that says laboratory, which is great. It's fantastic. But he's explaining to Taiju that like the nitric acid somehow is used in the revival process, but he's not sure how. And he takes him into the lab, and you see these like he says he's had dozens of failed experiments. And you see like dozens of like I think it's probably like 16 or 18. I didn't exactly count. Stone birds on these shelves. And he had one that he had poured some of the nitric acid on to when they were together just before that, and he classified like because he's very much following the scientific method of let's experiment, and it's clear he doesn't know what the cure is. He knows at some point something happened that involved him waking up and Taiju waking up. It involved the nitric acid, but he's not sure whether it was nitric acid plus time, nitric acid plus something else plus time. And he even mentions something that's kind of unscientific in its own right, which is willpower. Because that is not a quantifiable thing.
And I love how he's like, I knew you would do it because you wanted to see her.
Yeah, he's like, I knew you would wake up at some point because you wanted to see her. Because but he's not sure what is causing this reaction. So you see these dozens of stone birds, and as the episode goes on, and there's a lot of backing and forthing about various things, and then a couple of montages here and there. They finally get to a point where he eventually does figure out the concoction, and it involves nitric acid and ethanol to make what he calls nitol.
Yeah.
Because it's basically he calls it like a super etching agent, and because they're made of stone, he's hoping that's because nitric acid will deteriorate stone. He's hoping that nitol will do it faster, and that will help sort of jumpstart the process.
Yeah.
And so they make a couple of batches of nitol, and there's a brief moment, and super brief, I think it's like a second or two, where you see him at a desk, and he's got like these cups that are labeled 1 through 6. So again, following the scientific method of, and it doesn't show you pouring him, like creating like the various ratios.
Yeah.
It shows you enough to piece it together, which is nice.
Yeah. But it doesn't linger on that.
It doesn't linger on it.
That's probably like a
brief,
4-minute part or 2 minutes, just him explaining the science, like
he
the science behind
explains the
it.
science. There's a quick. They have to make wine in order to get the ethanol, so there's a quick montage of them like trying to figure out how to get they figure out how to make wine out of grapes
with some nice levity with
yeah, I love the levity with the wine because like Taiju.
Yeah, Senko is sitting there squeezing the grapes one at a time, and Taiju's like, "We need the grapes crushed." Throws them down. Stomps on them all.
And Senko's like, "All right, you can do it."
That's it. When he's like, "That is a more efficient method."
Yeah.
Or whatever, like it's so.
He's
good.
like, yeah, you can just, all right, you got it.
And that's one of the few that's one thing I think that's kind of surprising, especially for it being from like Shonen Jump, is I usually expect a lot more of like levity and comedy, and I'm sure there is, and it's just failing. I mean, because that is one of my criticisms of this show. Even though I love Taiju, is he's also kind of that typical buffoon, but that's why I suggest that like it's probably like the show is from Senku's perspective.
Yeah.
So you're seeing everyone in their like most base form because he's like super hyper logical.
Yeah. But no, as I was saying though, with the science part, so at the end of the episode, like you had mentioned, that they do end up releasing curing a bird, but
a swallow
specifically. Yes, you are correct. But just before that, when they're messing around with the nitol, there's a moment where they pour some on like a feather, and
it comes out. Yeah.
Well, Senku immediately thinks it's a failure because he walks over to this empty bucket and kicks it, like trying to figure out what's up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I screwed up again. And then all of a sudden he hears something or notices something out of the corner of his eye, and he looks over his shoulder, and the stone cracked around the feather.
Yeah.
And that you see it on his face that he knows he's got the cure. But in that process, when you're seeing them in the laboratory, in the background, there's a lot more bird stones now. It's now far more packed with them, which I also like because like it takes them like they meet and then it takes them another like 6 months, I think.
Yeah.
Because he said at the
very
end,
it's 6 months.
Yeah, it took him 1 year of experimenting to get to which he says was faster than when he was expecting. But yeah, he says it's 1 year's worth of experimenting got him to where he is. So I do like the fact that they are very like particular about their time frame.
And that's something that they really, really hammer in with Senku. Is he literally is kind of had become obsessed with numbers because when he was frozen in stone, all he did was count the seconds so he knew how long. And he somehow like that's one thing that was kind of confusing to me was when he was like. Where he's like, I counted it, so you want to come in the winter. It's like, you got to pick when you came out of the fucking stone thing?
Yeah, I'm not...
That was weird.
Well, it's not... I don't think he got to pick. I think he said... His point... I think his point was coming out in spring was the most important for survival. It's
and that was
unclear
probably
why-
he was probably saying that to Taiju in a
Yeah,
way, and it was him hinting, like you said earlier, where he would put him in there. And first, that's why he waited 6 months. Is he came think about 6 months before spring is the end of fall or somewhere around fall, right?
Yeah, so
Like, I think,
so
like-
Senku woke up in spring.
Yeah.
And 6 months later in fall, he woke up Taiju, which is when you would need, so it gave Senku time to find stuff, build shelter,
Yeah.
figure out what foods in the area were edible, to then wake up his friend in order for winter, where you would need more muscle to get more resources, get more cover. You know, it was important for Taiju to wake up in the fall after Senku, because it gave Senku time to figure stuff out. Because if Senku has to try to figure things out and take care of two people, I
Yeah.
think he'd be overloaded.
Well,
Because it's very clear he's
yeah.
smart, but
But
I feel like if he had to feed two people, find resources for two people, had to do all of that, and try to figure out how to save humanity.
well, he would do. He's following the scientific method. He's taking it one step. That's one thing.
Yeah,
I really.
yeah,
he's
he's following
always
one
going
step
like
at
a
a time.
scientific method. He's just going down this one step at a time. He experiment, failure, retry. Experiment, failure, retry. And like he keeps changing up things until he gets it right. And like that, and that's one thing I like. I think we've pretty much said pretty much everything to everything we gotta say to include this whole thing. Like ultimately, I would highly recommend this show based on this first episode.
First episode, definitely.
First episode in itself on its own, like I said, just even if you just watch that episode, don't watch nothing else.
Yeah, it's
absolutely
great,
worth it.
I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice personally by just doing it.
Yeah.
But if you're like, I want to give it one episode, it's a very good one episode.
Yeah.
It's a very solid one episode.
Yeah.
It sets up the characters. It sets up the situation. It
has its own story.
and
in
has its
itself.
own self-concluded story.
Yeah.
Yes,
and it spends all its time showing you everything rather than beating your head over with, oh, here's all these facts about why all this is
it only
happening.
explains
Like it
the
shows you what's
scientific
happening.
aspect. It
Yeah.
only ever explains the scientific aspect, which can be difficult to just visualize.
Well, and also maybe potentially they're trying to get people to nerd out
absolutely,
and go are they actually showing me the proper chemical components?
Yeah, that
is this mushroom?
That is one of the things that they do. When he's talking about Nidal, it shows the chemical compound behind him of ethanol and nitric acid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and my only real criticisms is like I said, I didn't as much as I like the character of Taiju. That character type in a lot of animes has grown. To me, is kind of tired, but that's why I feel like I said, the Senku's perspective. As well as the other criticism I have is I don't like the fact that they don't have any kind of they don't depict the character you get a good set. Well, no, that's a poor choice of words because they do a great job of. I was going to say they don't do a good job, but no, you get a great sense of their motivations.
Yeah,
it does an absolute great job, but it's that the fact that it's only 22-minute episode or whatever. It is.
Yeah.
And they do cram a lot in there. They cram a lot in there when that really could have been expanded on. But it's still great, and I wouldn't want to change. But I'm saying it could have been expanded on and not told just cramming and telling you everything, but showing you everything a little bit more. Because that little montage they part. That it's great because it does a little time skip and stuff, but they could have just shown a lot more. Yeah,
at one point, they show off Taiju, who's mind you, 16 years old, has this full bushy beard, clean, smooth everything. What 16-year-old grows a beard like that, man? Yeah, well, shut up. All right, fine. Yeah, but no, it's yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. That was.